Hello, it's me, Fidiscus. Pokemon is undergoing a lot of changes with the advent of Pokemon Champions coming out on April 8th, and the announcement of Winds and Waves, so I want to take the opportunity to talk about Pokemon. It's a series near and dear to me. Blue was my first video game at the height of Pokemania in the late 90s. I really love a lot of things about Pokemon, so I want to talk about some of the unique features this series has, and what I would want to see drive the series forward. What I want is somewhere between unlikely and impossible at this point, but I still think it's important to put my thoughts out there. First of all, what makes Pokemon's gameplay so special? Of course, people love the Pokemon as characters, and monster designs are still consistently strong, even 1000 Pokemon in, but why should someone play a mainline Pokemon game? In my estimation, the one thing Pokemon has done, better than any of its competitors, is create an interesting, balanced, competitive JRPG. No other has come close to having a competitive scene like Pokemon video games do. The type system, limited move pools, and specific stat caps built into Pokemon provide competitive depth that other JRPGs have never achieved. Any other game similar to Pokemon simply hasn't accessed the competitive depth. Make no mistake, when someone asks, "Why should I play Pokemon?" this is the answer. Now, that being said, there are major issues with the way that the single-player Pokemon experience communicates the competitive aspects of the game. It would be reasonable for someone who has played the Pokemon series to assume that the main competitive experience would be two trainers with 6 Pokemon in a single battle, like Smogon, but the Pokemon Company has never balanced the game with this in mind. All official Pokemon tournaments are held with Pick 4 double battle rules. Why is this format completely ignored in the game? Even whatever post-game area exists that has slightly more competitive rules than the main story, you're never granted 6 Pick 4 with Team Preview. Single-player ignoring double battles sacrifices the effort the battle design team puts in to make the game interesting. Take the number of abilities and moves in the game that only function in double battles. Moves like Helping Hand, Follow Me, Ally Switch, and Coaching are only useful in double battles. Moves like Pollen Puff, Tailwind, Howl, Dragon Darts, and Fake Out are significantly more interesting with double battle interactions than singles. And moves like Earthquake and Surf are designed with drawbacks that players don't feel at all in single battles, which severely imbalances the game. I understand that new players may struggle with grasping the details of double battles and be overwhelmed by all that can happen in 4 Pokemon's actions, but there's no reason for the single-player games to not follow a trainer's regular development, starting with single battles at low-level gyms, moving on to doubles, and then requiring Pick 4 during the later parts of the game. Ultimately, in some sense, it's a major failing that competitive doubles is the only video game format sanctioned by the Pokemon Company. 6 vs 6 singles was where Pokemon competition began. 4 vs 4 doubles significantly reduces the importance of defensive play, and games are often over before effects like Toxic, Sandstorm, or Spikes impact the game. I would like to see some more love given to a slower-paced game. If Pokemon Go gets a spot on the World Championship stage, certainly single battles should be there as well. Perhaps the developers are worried that the methodical play in singles would turn off would-be competitors. If that really is the case, why is the entire single-player experience built around what they believe is a flawed system? Speaking of things players aren't able to understand through game design, effort values and individual values, the most basic building blocks of Pokemon stats, have never really been communicated to new players. The rumor mill is suggesting that Pokemon Champions will essentially rework effort values, and that individual values are being removed entirely. Individual values being removed seems to be a clunky solution to a common player complaint that getting optimal individual values was time-consuming and boring, and it very much was. I will not miss hatching hundreds of eggs to find the slowest, lowest attack version of the newest Trick Room sweeper I want to use. But it's not like it had to be boring. The Pokemon Company could change individual values to work whatever way they think would be fun for players. I can imagine a system of hundreds of optional tasks that players could easily do with Pokemon, and each task they complete raises a specific individual value, which now start at 0. This way, casual players can strengthen Pokemon they like by doing things with them, and competitive players are given full customization of individual values. Instead, we're losing access to meaningful customization, especially for Ultra Beasts and Paradox Pokemon. That being said, I'm not entirely sure about my feelings about the change. I'm apprehensive about Champions supposedly being the VGC platform from now on. It may be, as people have speculated, that Wind and Wave will deviate significantly from traditional Pokemon gameplay. And if that's the case, I must ask, why? I said so before, but I feel very strongly that the real thing Pokemon has going for it is not its single-player campaigns, which have been poorly received past the DS era, with the exception of Legends Arceus. The thing that most people complained about in Sword and Shield was characters constantly interrupting gameplay for useless exposition, and the thing that most people complained about in Scarlet and Violet was piss-poor technical optimization. Pokemon games have always drawn criticism for being too easy, and the most recent games are the easiest of all. Will any of these issues be fixed by moving away from the traditional battle formula? Or will the Pokemon Company repeat all these mistakes in short time and remove the defining gameplay feature from a franchise that had relatively few complaints about the core mechanics? The Pokemon Company is sitting on top of the most financially successful media franchise in history. By any sane measure, Pokemon VGC should easily be the biggest esport in the world. Why does it feel like Champions is a send-off instead of a revolution for competitive Pokemon? I hope to be proven wrong, to be missing some critical information that will change my outlook on Pokemon Champions. I'll be playing it for sure, and that will be the truest test. Anyways, that's all I have to say about Pokemon at present. Thanks for watching, and good luck.